This presentation, Demystifying the Teradata Masters Certification, will be given by Julie Huber and Matt Shikatano with the help of some special guests who will be introduced a little later. Julie Huber is the Global Teradata Certification Manager responsible for the overall program direction and strategy. She has a master's degree in business from the University of Denver. Julie was hired in March 2008 as the Teradata Certification Professional Program Manager. She has a rich professional background in IT certification programs, including her previous role with Thomson Prometric as the Executive Director of Client Services for the Microsoft Certification Program. And Julie has worked for NCR and Teradata for 14 years in various positions, including customer education, Teradata training, and professional development roles. Matt Shikatano has more than 7 years' experience in the IT certification industry. He was formerly an account manager for Prometric, where he was responsible for managing the Teradata Certification Program, among other information technology programs. Matt earned his bachelor degree from the University of Pittsburgh, and he lives in western Pennsylvania with his wife and daughter. And it is with great pleasure that I now turn things over to Matt Shikatano.
Great. Thank you, Deborah, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and based on the poll, it looks like good evening to some of you. We're glad that you could be with us today across all these time zones, and we do have a very full agenda, so I think I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. We'd like to start with an overview of the TCPP program and the upgrade options that are available to those of you interested in completing your Teradata 12 and 14 master certifications. In our next segment, we're going to have Deborah Pendleton, our resident expert in brain-based learning practices here at Teradata, join us to discuss some best practices and exercises to help you improve the quality of your studying. And in our third segment, we're going to have an interactive interview-style discussion with a panel of 3 current Teradata 14 masters who are going to share their personal exam prep and completion experiences with you. And then lastly, for those of you who have not yet attempted the Teradata 12 Comprehensive Mastery Exam, or for those of you that would like a refresher before testing again, I'm going to be walking through a tutorial of that exam to show you what you can expect on test day. So the reason that most of you have joined us today is that you hold a V2R5 Master certification, and you do understand that upgrading now to Teradata 12 will be your best and most efficient option. So we're here today to take the mystery out of the process and give you the best chance of upgrading successfully and as painlessly as possible. If you remember nothing else from today's webinar, please remember this date. The 2 exams that are required for the short path V2R5 Master upgrade to Teradata 12 will be discontinued on March 31st, 2015. It's important to note that retake policies and waiting periods will apply, so starting the process as early as possible is important. And I know that many of you already hold vouchers, and based on the poll results are well on your way to upgrading your certification to a current version. The retake policy for the Master's Qualification Exam, or the TE012Q, allows for a maximum of 2 attempts by any candidate in a lifetime, with a waiting period of 21 days between attempts. And the retake policy for the Teradata 12 Comprehensive Mastery Exam, or the TE0127, allows for as many attempts as possible in a lifetime, but no more than 2 attempts in a 6-month period. And again, that waiting period of 21 days between attempts does apply. So please keep in mind that as we talk to you today, you have roughly 8 months left to take those exams. And these retake policies can be found on our website, and that web address will be shared with you towards the end of the presentation. It's also important to note that while still supported today, with our next major Teradata certification release, the V2R5 certifications are scheduled to go by way of the V2R3 certifications and enter our portfolio of unsupported certifications. So let's keep this in mind as we move forward and take a look at your options. So as you can see on this slide, you have 2 options in pursuing a current master certification. If you follow the solid line path on the left, you can see that in order to achieve a Teradata 12 master certification and be considered current, you would need to pass the two exams I mentioned previously, the Teradata 12 qualifying exam for V2R5 Masters and the Teradata 12 Comprehensive Mastery exam. After you've achieved the Teradata 12 Master certification, the time pressure will be off, and you can upgrade to Teradata 14 Master by taking one additional exam, the Teradata 14 Comprehensive Mastery exam, and that could be taken at your leisure, as the Teradata 14 track is not scheduled to retire at this time. Now, if you choose to take the alternate path and follow the dotted line on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll be replacing the 2-exam requirement with a total of 7 exams. And through that process, you will not achieve the Teradata 12 Master certification. You would only achieve the Teradata 14 Master certification. So if it's important to you to show that you've been a master on multiple levels, the first path would be the option for you. One of our masters, I'll note, his last active certification was on the V2R3 path, and when that was no longer supported, he upgraded through taking all Teradata 14 exams, and he can speak to this track through that perspective during the question and answer period a little bit later. So in an effort to make this process as clear and as painless as possible, TCPP has created your one-stop shop, V2R5 Masters, upgrading to Teradata 12 and 14. There's a plethora of information that can be found at the URL that's displayed on your screen. And if you already have our webpage, which is teradata.com/certification, bookmarked, as I hope you would by now, and you can get to this page by clicking on the V2R5 Masters upgrade link on the right-hand navigation rail that's listed out on that webpage. And I should probably take a moment just to distinguish that from the Path to Mastery link, which is located directly below it. That's more focused on candidates that are starting at the very beginning of the tracks, and it speaks more to pathing than it does to preparation and support. While you're out there, feel free to navigate through our entire website for preparation tips, access to prep tools, but from this Master's Upgrade page, you should have most of the things that you need to access to prepare. Things like study guides, practice questions, training recommendations, the roadmaps that we're discussing today, special events such as this webinar, as well as discounts. And if you're out there looking around our pages and you don't seem to be able to find something you're interested in or don't know where you found it last, feel free to chat with us. We just implemented a live chat feature that will be listed on that front page, as well as some other pages throughout the Teradata Certified Professional pages on Teradata.com. There's some limited hours, but while an operator is available, that icon will be listed, and you can chat directly with the representative of the Teradata Certified Professional Program. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Julie to discuss a few of these things that we've talked about in some more detail.
Thank you, Matt. This is Julie Huber, and I'd like to also add my welcome to everyone on the call today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd just like to spend a few minutes with you talking about the exam preparation process and the tools we have available, as well as some of our current promotions. As a V2R5 Master, you have 2 exams to complete in order to achieve Teradata 12 Certified Master. And before taking either of these mastery exams, let me just outline a few things that we would recommend that you consider. First, review all of the V2R5 Master upgrade information on our website that Matt just pointed you towards. We've had many programmatic changes that have been made to the program since V2R5 certification, so you'll want to review all the program policies and procedures. Also, review the exam objectives. We have a fairly detailed published list of exam objectives for both of those exams on our website. So take advantage of that information and focus your studies on any areas of weakness. Additionally, we've published a list of references, and there are also practice questions available on the website. Please keep in mind that although you may not be actively or regularly involved in all of the objective areas, success on these exams requires this breadth of knowledge. And one last thing, ensure that you have the recommended training and years of experience. Okay, so the first exam in the two-part series is the qualification exam for V2R5 Masters. This exam tests the breadth of information across all of the underlying Teradata 12 exams. So in addition to all of the other things that I mentioned are available on the website, if you're looking for even more study material for this particular exam, we also do offer a master's qualification study guide and additional practice questions. These are both available through our certification app, which we call TCAP. It's spelled TCAPP, and TCAP is available for both iOS and Android devices and can be downloaded free of charge. You can then make in-app study guide and practice question purchases. Currently, we're offering the Master's Qualification Guide at 25% off the list price through September 30th, 2014. The guide is available in both printed and ebook. Also, keep in mind that both the qualifying exam and the comprehensive mastery exam are restricted access exams. And if you don't remember what that means at this point, let me explain. That means it requires that an eligibility voucher number is available in order for you to register for the exam through Prometric. Eligibility vouchers are available through the Teradata Certification Tracking System. And currently we're offering a $50 discount off the Master's Qualification exam. And if you want to note that, it's TE012Q. TE012Q is the number for that exam that we're offering the $50 discount for. That pricing is good through September and will be automatically applied during the registration process. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the comprehensive mastery exam and the preparation tools that are available there. So if you have an iPad, we do have an iPad app, and you can download that. Once you've downloaded TCAP, you can do an in-app purchase for the Comprehensive Mastery app. We also have recently released the Comprehensive Mastery app as a guidebook, and that's also available for computers and Android devices. The guidebook contains the same information as the app, just in a different format. So there's no need to purchase both unless you want them to be resident on different devices. This preparation material is being offered at a 25% discount through the end of September. Please stay with us for the entire webinar. During the last segment, Matt's going to take you through an exam tutorial so you know what to expect to see and how to navigate through the Comprehensive Mastery exam. This exam does deviate a bit from the traditional exam format, and Matt will show you exactly what to expect. And just to keep things a little fun and put some excitement into the program, we're also running a contest for all certification candidates that achieve a master level certification. Each month, and we started in May, through the end of March 2015, individuals that achieve a master certification will be entered into a monthly drawing to win a $100 Amazon gift card. You can earn 2 entries if you achieve both the Teradata 12 and Teradata 14 master certification. We have already drawn 3 lucky winners, and hopefully those winners are on the call with us today. And we'll continue to draw each month through March of 2015. Your monthly drawings do carry over from month to month unless or until you win a monthly drawing. All candidates will be entered into a final drawing to win either an iPad or an equivalent amount that will be applied as a discount on a 2015 partners registration, and that will be winner's choice. Monthly contest winners may only win once, but you are still eligible for the final drawing in March. So if you want more information about the contest, you can visit the TCPP website, and there are all the terms and conditions for the contest there. All right, so now that you have a good understanding of the study material that's available for exam preparation, we're going to turn our attention to some techniques that can make your study time more effective. It is with great pleasure that I welcome and have the opportunity to introduce Deborah Pendleton. Deborah joined Teradata in 1999 and was a member of the product management and service offer development teams until 2005, when she joined the Teradata Learning Organization. Prior to joining Teradata, Deborah led a technical consulting firm she co-founded in 1989. In addition to her role in Teradata Learning, Deborah provides services as a business coach for Teradata employees. She is certified by the International Coaching Federation and is a graduate of the International Coaching Academy Advanced Program. Deborah is currently a member of the Teradata Learning Organization. She leads a team that designs and develops professional development learning assets and programs for Teradata internal audiences. Deborah and her team employ traditional instructional design methodologies, but more recently they have adopted adult learning concepts that stem from recent neuroscience research. Deborah will be sharing some of these concepts with you, particularly as they impact your TCPP studies in preparation for certification. Deborah.
Thank you, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here today. Before I get started, I'd like to ask each of you to paint a vision for yourself. In this vision, lay out a plan of study for you to reach your certification goals. Let me ask you, how often will you study? How will you organize your study sessions? You may already have this vision, which is great. Congratulations. I'm hoping that over the next few minutes I can offer some suggestions, though, that will not only add to your vision, but help you create study sessions that are even more productive. And for those of you who have not yet created or acted on a vision, I hope this motivates you to get started. Here's a little background and why Julie asked me to participate today. As part of our work in Teradata Learning, we've been interested in neuroscience, particularly what the research tells us in terms of how our brains learn. And even more important than how we initially learn, how we move that learning into long-term memory so that it's available to us at the time of need. For example, as you have upcoming, an exam, or maybe even more importantly, for application on the job. For our purposes today, I've boiled a number of resources noted at the bottom of this page down to a few key points. So the resources are Brain Rules by John Medina, 10 Brain-Based Learning Laws That Trump Traditional Education by Jeff Hurt, and then finally Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise and the Brain by John Rady. The book, Brain Rules, and the article, 10 Brain-Based Learning Laws That Trump Traditional Education, focus on very similar points. The book, Spark, focuses on one area, and that's the impact of exercise on our brains. And we're going to start there today. So about exercise. Exercise is the incredible test score booster. We've all heard many times, I'm sure, at least I have, from many people, the benefits of aerobic exercise. Recent studies give us a compelling explanation of the benefits and the neuroscience behind what physically happens. Exercise gets blood to your brain, bringing it glucose for energy and oxygen. Glucose and oxygen, in turn, stimulate the protein that keeps neurons connecting, which is a critical component of not only learning, but moving that learning into long-term memory. In the book Spark, the author describes a study conducted in the Naperville School District in Illinois. At Naperville, they transformed standard PE, which has traditionally been focused, at least this is what I remember, on kind of team sports, where you don't really move, not everybody at least, around a lot. They transformed that into a physical fitness program where everyone experiences extended periods of high activity and high heartbeat. The results have been nothing short of amazing. Just a few examples. The 19,000 students in this district were the fittest and some of the smartest in the nation and continue to be after they implemented this new PE program. And after implementation of the program, the 8th graders in Naperville participated in what you may be familiar with, the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study. This is a test designed to compare students from different countries in their knowledge of math and science. There were 59,000 U.S. students out of 230,000 internationally that took this test. The Naperville 8th graders' results were separated from the rest of the U.S. participants in order to isolate them in a benchmark, so a foundational benchmark. Bottom line, though, in this initial test, they scored 6th in math, and this is behind Singapore, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Japan. And amazingly, they scored 1st across the world in science. These are really incredible results, and they continue in Naperville, and these results have spawned many more studies of the correlation between exercise and learning. In fact, many other educational institutions are leveraging these programs and findings to institute their own fitness programs. Let's go to the next point, and this is about sleep. The brain doesn't sleep to rest. We all know that sleep is important, but why? I know it's effective to get a good night's sleep before a tough task. We all know that, like studying. But this point is about sleep after studying. Sleep study shows that the neurons of your brain exhibit vigorous rhythmical activity when you're asleep, perhaps replaying what you learned that day. In fact, there's really strong evidence that when we sleep, we continue to embed what we've learned during the day and actually make connections with other knowledge stored in long-term memory. So it's not only important to get that good night's sleep before a tough assignment like studying, but also afterwards to embed the learning. Let's move to the next point, which is attention. We probably know this, but it's really, really important. The brain needs a break. It's pretty obvious that learning requires directing attention to a particular topic. So again, research shows that intense attention is most effective in short bursts, and that multitasking, trying to do many things at once, well, you're not focusing as much as you need to really get that intense attention on a task. So multitasking is really a myth. Also, we're really better at seeing patterns and abstracting the meaning of an event than we are at recording detail. This ties to the concept that emotions and tying learning to, hey, what's in it for me, not only increases the motivation to learn, but by applying what we learn to real life, we increase the likelihood that we'll actually remember. The bottom line, the more you can connect what you learn to what you do, the more you're likely to turn the learning into long-term memory. Next point, memory. If you don't repeat it, you'll forget it. Brain Rules describes 4 stages of processing learning: encoding, storing, retrieving, but here's something odd, forgetting. The point here is use it or lose it. In learning, we face the very sad statistic that 80% of what students learn in a learning interaction is lost within days of the learning event. The way to make long-term memory more reliable is to repeat the learning. The studies also show that we are more likely to successfully learn if these intervals are often and short. Okay, another, writing. What you write, you remember. So put another way, we write to remember. We remember because we write. It's actually that physical act of writing or typing or texting that embeds learning in a much stronger way than merely reading or hearing. Let's go to the final point, talking. And this may be a little counterintuitive. The one who talks most learns most. Even more than writing, talking something through, or even better, teaching someone else, is an incredible learning booster. From an instructional design perspective, I think that what we mostly see is learning events that are about the sage on the stage rather than about the learner. We'll talk in a minute about how to apply this concept to your study. So how do we bring this all together for you? Let's look at the 4 points on the wheel. We're going to talk about prepare, schedule short study sessions, plan to repeat, and buddy up. Prepare. By this I mean exercise, preferably before a study session, and make sure you get a good night's sleep after the session. Franklin Covey, the time management experts, also stress the importance of sleep. Frankly, I've always thought this was a bit of a made-up science, but think about it. How many times have you experienced an aha moment after a good night's sleep during which you've actually slept on a gnarly problem? Science is beginning to show us why this actually happens. Point 2, schedule short study sessions. Keen, focused attention is required to learn. It's difficult to stay laser-focused for long periods of time, so plan ahead. Schedule short sessions to meet your certification deadlines. And remember to incorporate what we talked about before, writing. Write down key points. Help embed that learning. Point 3, plan to repeat. I said plan to repeat. We suggest that you repeat previous learning before moving into new topics during each of your learning sessions. The point is, cramming for something as complex as you are studying is not really effective. So get started soon if you haven't already, and make a plan. Include topics to cover that repeat what you've already learned so you keep reinforcing, and then gradually add new topics in each one of your sessions. And finally, buddy up. As we said, we find in our classes, the more we allow students to reflect, internalize, and then teach someone else, or talk about the concept, the more they retain. From a study perspective, you can achieve this goal by buddying up with someone else and teaching each other. Julie has some recommendations regarding how to do this within the context of the Teradata Master Certification Studies. Thank you very much for allowing me to join you today. I wish you the very, very best of luck in your studies and your certification and how you apply that to your actual job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah. I'll just make one quick comment on the buddying up. So everybody who is a current master has access to the Masters Forum. It's a private forum that we've set up on Developers Exchange. So that's a great way for you guys to come together and connect with other masters, ask questions, have discussions. Of course, we never have discussions about any live test questions. That would be a security violation. So, but that's a great way to buddy up, and then if you want to study with somebody else, you can always contact each other privately on the side once you connect through the Masters Forum. Okay, I'm really excited for this portion of the webinar, the Masters Panel Q&A. But first, I'll introduce the panel, and then I will turn it over to our moderator, Matt Chicatano, who will first be asking our panel a few of our most frequently asked questions. We will then open it up to anyone in the audience with a question. Let me first introduce Walter Alexander. Walt started working on Teradata in 2001 and has worked up to becoming the Senior East Retail Architect. Additionally, Walt has performed mentorship for internal Teradata resources and customer resources, presented at partners on the ELDM ATM concepts, and has achieved the V2R3, V2R5, and Teradata 14 Master certifications. Thomas Umberger is a Senior Data Warehouse Architect in the Teradata Professional Services Organization. He has been developing and supporting enterprise relational database solutions for over 28 years and has been implementing Teradata solutions for the last 24 years. Tom achieved his V2R3 Master certification in 2003 and achieved his Teradata 14 Master certification in 2013. Our last panel member, Jeffrey Plummer, is a principal consultant with Teradata Corporation. He has worked with Teradata since 1989, with his entire career working in professional services within some of the largest financial and healthcare institutions in the United States. His experience includes database design and administration, ETL, and database architecture, with specific focus on concrete methodology and solution delivery, as well as serving on the team that builds the Teradata certification exams. Jeffrey holds the V2R3, V2R5, Teradata 12, and Teradata 14 Master certification. I will now turn it over to Matt for the panel discussion.
Thanks, Julie. I think we're going to start with the first question to Jeffrey. So Jeffrey, why did you decide to pursue certification initially, and why have you continued to upgrade to your current certification?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. It's a good question. It's a part of our career development plan within Teradata is to keep up to date with our certifications and to continue to learn. But even from a customer perspective, or we're always working on systems sometimes that are not the most current. A customer doesn't really upgrade their system as quickly as we would have certification exams available. I'm sure many people on the line could be at a different version of Teradata than 14. So in essence, you can get ahead of the game by learning the new features that are coming and make yourself valuable within the organization that you work in if you're a customer as well.
Great, Jeff. Thanks. Tom, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so originally my V2R5 Master certification was dropped in July of 2013. So technically I was no longer considered a Teradata Certified Master, so it was really critical for me to reestablish my certification. And as you stated earlier, Matt, we're going to be eventually at some point dropping V2R5 certification. So those folks on the phone with that may eventually be in my same position if they don't move now.
That's right, and just to clarify that again, the plan is that with the next major Teradata certification release, that V2R5 would move to an unsupported state. So you would want to upgrade to 12, and now's the time to do that with the shorter path available. Walt, anything else to add to that question?
Yeah. So before 2001, I was certified on another vendor product and worked on it for, I guess, about 10 years. And when I started learning Teradata, I decided to do the certification while I learned Teradata. But my long-term goal was to improve my marketability and my ability to support my customers.
Great. Thanks, Walt. I think we'll stick with you and move to the next question. Can you describe for us a little bit about your preparation for the certification exams and what resources and materials that you have found most helpful, and any study tips that you might have?
Yes. I have a mentoring program for both customers and internal Teradata resources, and that is probably the most common question that I'm asked. And what I recommend to everyone is that you go out to the website, you become familiar with the website for TCPP, and when you're preparing for an exam, always look at what the topics are, what the exam objectives are, because I find that a lot of people work in different types of organizations, small organizations, large organizations, and it limits what you can learn and experience. And what you need to do is look at those exam objectives to make sure that you're going to cover everything when you prepare for it. And then the next thing that I recommend to people is once they understand what those objectives are, then plan out how you're going to prepare for it. And I usually start with the orange books. I'll hit all the major features with the orange books, and then I'll start moving down, say, to standard documentation and study guides.
Great, thanks, Walt. And that is a common question that we get as well. Where do I start? What do I do? Website's a great place to find links to all sorts of information. And after this webinar, you can find many of the things that these are referring to as well. Tom, any resources or things that you like to use particularly?
Well, like Walt, I also use the orange books because they are very specific to the new features. And then I found that Teradata Education Network training material real helpful for me also. And one more thing that I did is, and kind of Jeff alluded to, it's good to get that hands-on experience. So I downloaded Teradata Express for Teradata 14 because I didn't necessarily have hands-on at my current customer to be able to get access to a Teradata 14 system. So that gave me that hands-on experience.
Great, thanks, Tom. And that link specifically is out under the preparation page on our TCPP website if anyone is interested in downloading that. Jeffrey, just to wrap up, anything else that you like to use?
Just a couple of things when I'm building training for the people that I mentor as well. I like going through the release definition documents because it shows the major features that are coming on in the next release, and especially if you're going back to look at a Teradata 12 exam, and you've been a Teradata 5 Master, it's good to know when these features came in, because it helps you prepare for the Teradata 12 test to know what was in that. And also the study guides that you guys, Matt, put together, very good, very helpful, very direct, and very focused on the exams you're preparing for.
Great, thanks. And those study guides, as Julie mentioned, are available through Amazon, but they're also available in various electronic formats as well, if folks are interested. Let's start this one with Jeff. I think we'll stick with you. So as you see, many in the audience are V2R5 Masters, so it may have been a decade since some of these folks have tested. What advice do you have for those that have a good deal of work experience but may not necessarily have a lot of updated training or testing over the years?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I get that as well. And what I tell the people is that, the exams are a lot more practical and scenario-based than they used to be as we work to make the exams more real life. A lot of that work experience that you have is going to aid you in the newer exams, where maybe it didn't help you as much in the earlier exams that may have been more book learning, right? So that practical application is very much an asset to the Teradata 12 exams, and then even more so as we moved into the 14 exams.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And Tom, now your layoff after V2R3 was quite some time, so you might be able to offer some perspective on this. What did you find after having plenty of work experience, but not quite as much testing and certification experience over the years? What did you find helpful?
Well, and so I, as you alluded to earlier, I had to go through all 6 of the core exams and then take the 7th mastery exam. So I found it helpful to do deep dives into the areas I didn't do on a day-to-day basis. So I didn't have that day-to-day experience. And I found that was helpful, because I don't do system administration tasks every day. So I found it helpful to really spend a little more of my study time focusing in those areas, for example, so I was more comfortable when the questions came up.
Great, thank you. And Walt, when we talked earlier, you talked about making it your mission to know everything. How do you set out to start that and do that in a manageable way?
Well, I think the bottom line is that the technology is changing quickly, and it's really hard for people to keep up. And like you said, I make it a mission to know everything. So what I do is I set goals for learning, and I'll sit down and I'll go through the paces of learning, but I find that I also need to demonstrate what I've learned. So once I've learned something, then what I do is I look for opportunities to either discuss it with other Teradata resources or customers, or I look for opportunities to test it on test systems, or in the case of, let's say, your employer or your customer are upgrading from one version to another, that's an opportunity to demonstrate some of those learnings. For example, I had one customer that was upgrading to Teradata 14, and they already had an automated stats collection process. Well, in Teradata 14, the syntax changed, and there were performance improvements. So that was a great opportunity to demonstrate what I learned.
Great. Thanks, Walt.
And Matt, on that point, I'd like to also mention that, as Tom talked about earlier, downloading that Teradata Express version, even if you don't have a test system available, is a great way to learn the new features and to see them in operation.
Great. That's a good point. Again, that's available through the certification pages on the web. Let's go to we'll start with Tom for this question. One of the changes that the folks are going to notice that haven't tested since V2R5 is the addition of the comprehensive mastery exam that was brought into the program with Teradata 12. And can you tell us a little bit just what's different or what's special about this exam in your opinion?
Well, as the title implies, it's comprehensive. So it was good that it demonstrates that broad knowledge of solving specific design decisions that a lot of us go through on a day-to-day basis. And it covered a lot of aspects, so it wasn't just necessarily focused on PDM or one track. So it's really good to have that broad exposure as you're preparing.
Great, and that speaks kind of to what you said about applying, taking the things that you might not do on a daily basis and make sure that you know those as well, because it is all encompassing. So it's important to look at your strengths and weaknesses and find where you need to brush up. Jeffrey, anything to add about the Comprehensive Mastery exam?
I just like the fact that we've developed something that's a little bit more real world. From the earlier exams to the 12 exams and beyond, something that shows a complete company scenario where, you may have had, access to different facets of database data warehousing within your company, but maybe not others, and it gives you an opportunity to use the knowledge that you have and be able to expand it to more real-world situations there. So it's a very good test.
Great, and we will take a look at that in a little bit through the tutorial to show you what this scenario and the application of real-world knowledge looks like when you're sitting in a testing seat, for those of you that may not be familiar. I think we'll start the next question with Walt. Walt, what aspects of the certification process did you find to be most challenging, and how do you recommend that folks overcome those challenges?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. So basically, you have, 168 hours per week. You've got your work time, you've got your sleep time, you've got your family time, you've got your hobby time. I find that I've got to set goals for myself, but then I've got to be dedicated to achieving that goal and performing time management. Okay, and I mentor a lot of people on this, and a lot of them say, well, I just don't have the time. And what I find is that really you've got to plan it, you've got to be committed to it.
Okay, well, thanks. Jeffrey, anything to add?
That's very much the same as what I look at it too. It's a dedication of setting time. Those of us who work in challenging occupations always have the ability to make time, but sometimes the commitment to make time is a little bit lacking, and that's really going to be required when you start preparing for exams that are comprehensive.
Great, thank you. And Tom, when we discussed this previously, you talked a little bit about kind of setting that goal out in the future, so getting the test on the calendar. Did you have to be helpful?
Yeah, and so with my travel schedule and the complexities I have in my schedule, what I would do is I would set a firm date for my test and go out to Prometric and pick a date that worked on my business schedule. I would allocate that so my customers knew I wasn't available. And then that gave me a firm incentive that I needed to prep and be ready at that date rather than waiting until I was ready and then setting a date for the test.
All right, that's great. And I'd recommend that for a lot of folks, especially to get those seats secured as well with the time waning that you're able to take these two exams. Make sure that seat is reserved and that you're ready to go before the end date, and work towards that goal. I think we'll stick with you, Tom, for this next question. Can you discuss some of the benefits that you've seen of becoming a Teradata Certified Master and maintaining that master over time?
Well, I think it demonstrates to the customers that I work with and as I come in that I've got a commitment to understanding the technology that I'm helping them to utilize. And I also like, just on a side thing, it's a little extras that we get as being masters, and it's kind of been one of the incentives that drove me to get my master's, because I was going to lose this. So if you attend partners, you get reserved seating for the keynotes, you get a little sticker on your badge that says you're a master, you get a nice little plushie that you can make a collection of at home. So it's little things like that also make a difference.
Great, and a little tease, we are as a program just taking a look at the benefits package and the things that we're going to be able to offer to our current level of masters moving forward. So stay tuned for some information about that we'll send you as soon as we have more information available. Jeffrey, can you talk about this in how you see it affecting your career and other things throughout the time you've had a master's certification?
Yeah, for a couple of different ways. I mentioned our career development plan earlier is more of a requirement to stay current or whatnot, but in my role, I often have to interview people for assignments on the projects that I work on, and I literally create a couple of piles when I look through the resumes of the people I'm interviewing, and if they have certification as V2R5, it may go in one pile with everybody else, but if they've got a 12 or a 14 certification, I'll definitely start there with the interview process, because those individuals obviously have demonstrated that they're more current and have success with the later versions that I'm usually looking for. So that's kind of what I think of as a benefit, both from a career path.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And Walt, anything to add?
Yes. So we all know that the technology is always changing. It's a product that evolves. Every product evolves. And I'm in and out of about probably 30 customers a year, helping them make design decisions and mentoring. And what I see is people are falling behind in the technology and not staying with the certification. Now, if you go and stay with the technology and you achieve the certification, that shows that you're committed to staying up with the technology. But what I also find is that if you have the certification and you're updated with the technology, it offers you the opportunity to demonstrate leadership on the new technology. I find a lot of customers make decisions based on the old technology, and if you have that opportunity to demonstrate that knowledge and that experience, then that will set you apart from the rest of the people that are out there trying to do the same job you are.
Great. Yeah, demonstrating leadership in that environment is definitely a good point. Thanks, Walt. We do just have one or two more questions that we have prepared here, but we'd like to answer some of yours. So if you have questions, Julie showed you how to submit those. Please begin to submit those questions as they come up, and we'll get to them as they come in. I think we'll stick with you, Walt, for this question. Is there anything on a personal level, tips that you would have for someone on test day, or experiences that you've had that you would like to share with the group?
Yes. The first thing that I would recommend is that when you're preparing for exams, that you not study 3 days before the exam. Make sure that you're ready and then not do it before the exam, because I find that if I look at something at the last minute, I'll confuse myself. The second thing is that when you take the exam, read the question and ask yourself, what is the question asking? A lot of people say, oh, the questions are trick questions. Well, they're really not trick questions. What they are is they're questions that are challenging your thought process and to get you to the best answer. So I find that after reading the question, if I ask myself what the question is asking, I can better evaluate the answers, because I found that in the past, before I started doing that, I would just read the question, bam, there's the answer, and I would get it wrong. But through experience of doing these exams, I've realized that if I ask myself what the question is asking, then I can better evaluate what the answers are and get it right.
Great, thanks. And that's a good point, to slow down and think about it a little bit longer. In the development process, we sit in a room and we talk about, not designing these questions to trick people, but we do need to include what's called a plausible distractor, something that makes sense in that situation as it applies to the question. So again, they're not designed to trick, but they are designed to make you think. So that's a good point, Walt. Thank you. Jeffrey, anything to add?
Well, actually, Matt, it's interesting that you pulled that out, because that's one of the things that I hear a lot as well. The questions are tricky, and I would just stress from somebody who writes exam questions, we do our best not to make that the case, and we review each other's work, in a group session, not to make that the case, and so often we play devil's advocate with the question, saying, well, I could take it this way, and you might take it this way, and as you can imagine, a group of 15 people all looking at one question, there are a lot of different opinions, so we do our best not to make it tricky, and we usually look for the more literal reading of a question, no figurative language in there, and that's a very big a big thing for us to do to make the questions more real world and more literal, as Walt says. So I think that point is very good that Walt had there about reading the question and look for the more literal interpretation of it. From a personal standpoint, it's interesting, like Deborah Pendleton said earlier, I always try in the morning of the test to get some exercise. Even if it's just, finding a treadmill to walk for a little bit or to walk outside, or if I have an ability to walk to a testing center or whatnot, I try to get some exercise in the morning because it kind of gets my, my senses working or whatnot. And there's this element of trusting yourself and not over-preparing that Walt had. And those kind of test day rituals to me are very important. You're always going to perform better when you feel confident in yourself. So a little exercise, a little personal pep talk, I'm going to do well on this exam when you go in, it does a world for you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And we are just about out of time for this segment, so Tom, I will give you the floor to either answer that question specifically or just add any other points you might like to add, and then I think we're going to go out to see what questions have been coming in from the audience.
Yeah, I like getting to the test location early, and unlike Walt, I do like refreshing myself through my study notes as I'm waiting. And as you stated earlier, some of the test procedures have changed at some of the test centers, so you might want to leave yourself a little extra time so you have time to sign in and do all the things you need to do at the test centers, which might have changed from the last time you went through a test.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tom, and there is some information that is out on the TCPP website. We actually recently added a video that talks about the sign-in process, what you're expected to provide to the folks, because we don't want to make the actual testing experience itself cause so much anxiety that your performance may suffer. So, we want you to be able to test on your merits, not on whether or not you can sit in a testing center. So that's something to do. Look out there before you go, and all of the information is available to you prior to going to the testing date. I think with that, Julie, I think we're going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of take a panel seat, so if there's questions that come in specific to the program, I'm happy to field those, but we'd love to have some questions from the group. Please feel free to submit them now if you haven't already, and ask these gentlemen any questions you might have about the exams, and I'll be here to answer some questions as well. Julie, what do we have coming in?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we're now going to take some of the audience questions. So just a reminder, if you do have a question for our Masters panel, or you want to make a general comment at this time, please use the Q&A tool on the upper left-hand side of your screen, type your question or comment, and click Ask. And we've had several good questions coming in. So this one is for the Masters. Any one of who could answer this question. Two-part question. Did you find time in your regular working schedule to study, and how much time is appropriate to study for each of the Master's upgrade exams? Maybe I'll just throw that question out first to Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's a very good question of allocating your time to it. If you come to an exam, a comprehensive exam like me, you had certain areas of expertise that you brought to the exam. I started with Teradata working at more of the database administration and physical database design aspects of warehousing. So in those areas, I probably more just really read the release documentation to know what was coming out in those areas, and really not diving in and studying practical application of that. But the other areas where I maybe didn't have as much familiarity, like workload management and some of the higher levels of architecture, I had to spend a little bit more time with it. But just like the panel was talking about a little bit earlier, making sure that you got an hour a night set in place in the evening sometime when you still have an ability to think well, and you're not too stressed out from your work day, to be able to get some solid time in there is always a good idea.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Does anybody else on the panel like to add to that? Okay, I have several other questions, so we'll continue on. So I have a question that says, The last time I worked on a Teradata 12 database is in 2010, and I'm currently busy working on our production server upgrade from Teradata 14 to Teradata 14.10. With so many changes that have happened in the last 4 to 5 years from 12 to 14, how do I go backwards and prepare for the 12Q and 127 exams geared towards the Teradata 12 database?
Me.
Go ahead.
That's a great question. And I find that when I prepare for exams and I'm looking at the exam objectives, I have to go and get the material to study for the exam objectives. Okay, so when I go to get the orange books, they are in the titles. When you download the orange books, you'll see that it's for 12 or 12.10, 13, 13.10, 14, 14.10, that type thing. And you have to get the specific copy for the exam that you're preparing for. Another thing you can do is you can go back to release notes, and you can go back to study guides, and you can go back to standard documentations, because we have versions for everything. So when I told you guys earlier, look at the exam objectives, what I do is when I understand what the objectives are, then I go out and I actually plan where to get the material and what material to get, and then once I've got the material, then I plan out my studying. So you can find the material specific to the exam.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to that, Julie. If you look at our exams and when they were written, to what release they were written, and you look at the way we build database systems, right, there are very few situations where features go away, right? It's an additive database, and we continue to expand the database. So the knowledge that you have in some cases on, like the gentleman said, the 14 to 14.10, the features that are available in 14, if you know that information, you almost have a leg up in doing the information on 12. So as Walt says, you go for that particular release, but you also have to trust that the knowledge is additive in some ways, and that the questions were written for that particular release. You're going to have some benefit with that additional knowledge you have.
Excellent. I'm going to move on because we still have several questions and just a couple more minutes to answer them. The next question reads, I have the Teradata 12 Certification Study Guide Master's Qualification. Is there anything on that, on the exam that's not covered in the book? And I think, Matt, that's probably out to you as a program question.
Yeah, there really shouldn't be when we're talking about the master's qualification exam itself. I mean, so just to answer that question on a more broad sense, the study guides are meant to complement practical experience and a lot of the things we've been talking about today. So the orange books, downloading of the software and actually using it and working through it, and you just overall your work experience, and then the study guides to help you align your thinking with the objectives, as Walt mentioned, that he always downloads ahead of time. So like any other exam that's out there, that study guide is designed to help you kind of top off your studying, I would say, as you work through the master's qualification information. But yes, it's focused on all of those things that are in the exam. But again, you need the other experience, other things outside of just the book to pass that exam.
Thank you, Matt. And I will add to that the study guide that we're talking about is developed in partnership with the Teradata Certification Program. So with myself and the authors, so they do follow the content as far as the objectives within what you're going to be tested on. So be sure, if you have that guide, read the objectives at the front of every chapter, and also make sure you use in the back of the guide, there's several practice questions. Use that also. And you'll get a more in-depth look at objectives if you download the PDF file on the certification website with all the objectives. Okay, on to Another audience question. This question says, I have done all the Teradata 14 exams except the final master exam, and I have the Teradata 12 master qualifying exam. I think that might mean have completed that one. So this person has one more exam, the comprehensive mastery, to take. The question is, should I reinstall Teradata 12 and Teradata tools like Teradata Manager to prepare for the Teradata 12 master's exam, as I am comfortable with Viewpoint for Teradata 14 and Teradata 14.10?
So if I understand it, they've taken and I assume passed all of the Teradata 14 exams, and really are one exam away from achieving their Teradata 14 Masters. If that's how I understand it correctly, there really wouldn't be a need unless you want to have the Teradata 12 Master certification as well, as some people do like to prove that they've been on multiple versions as a master. You know, there isn't necessarily a need to go back and take 12 if you're happy to move on to be a Teradata 14 Master and just move forward with that exam. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they were getting at with that question. Did you read that differently, Julie?
I did not, but if the individual wants to resubmit anything different, I'd be happy to reread the question. The next question reads, traditionally we've tested on one content area at a time, like SQL or physical design and implementation. One of the master panel members mentioned that the mastery exam is comprehensive and real life. What does that look like actually?
I said that, but Matt's going to go through the tutorial, and I think that's perfect to show exactly what it looks like.
Yes, stay tuned.
Excellent. The next question, TCAP app for iPad has an in-app plugin for the Teradata 12 Mastery exam. Is it planned to have a similar plugin for the Teradata 14 Masters exam? I will answer that, and the answer is yes, and we're working on it, and stay tuned because we'll be sending out big announcements when there is something available on the app for 14. Thank you for the question. All right, one more, and then we're going to have to move on. Based on my own personal experience, the study guide exam objectives for the 12Q, which is the qualification exam, posted on the Teradata website, are not matching with topics I see in Teradata 12 qualifying exam for V2R5 Masters study guide. Which one should I follow?
I think that has to do with the fact that we've introduced some more detailed objectives more recently for the Teradata 12 exam. So what you see in the book itself would be a higher level objective. We've gotten down into the weeds, if you will, and added some more of the, so each of the exam sections, you know, is broken into objectives and kind of sub-objectives that funnel up into those objectives. So we've gone to a lower level to try to help people better prepare and also take feedback if they have failed the exam, to go back to the objectives and look at, you know, what's the more granular, detailed level of what this objective means. So you're going to want to use both. But the more detailed, granular level is what you're seeing from out on the web page.
Okay, thank you. So that looks like all the time we have for questions right now. If we didn't have a chance to get to your question, please feel free to resubmit it to the certification mailbox, and we will get back to you with an answer. So let's continue, and I'd just like to take a moment and thank our panel members, Walter Alexander, Thomas Umberger, and Jeffrey Plummer, for joining us today. Thank you so much for your very helpful information. Okay, we are now moving into our last segment of the webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to do a tutorial of the mastery exam and how to navigate the comprehensive mastery exam.
Great, thanks again. So, you know, what I've heard today is that a lot of you have the V2R5 certification but have not tested in several years. So you probably don't know quite what that scenario-based exam looks like we've talked about. So I want to pull back the curtain and show you that today so you get a chance to see it prior to sitting in the testing seat. And for those of you that may have actually tested this exam already unsuccessfully, we may have made some cosmetic changes between the last time you were sitting and this time because new technology has become available through our test delivery providers. So just good opportunity to take this and show you what those small changes would be. Most functionality will remain the same, but a few minor tweaks. You know, what distinguishes the Teradata 12 and 14 mastery exams, like we've talked about, is really the two real-world scenarios that require a candidate to be able to apply that situational knowledge to the answering of questions. I'll be showing you specifically the Teradata 12 version of this exam, but the Teradata 14 version will function pretty much exactly the same as the Teradata 12 version does. You see here on the slide that the breakdown of the main sections of the mastery exam. So the exam now has two built-in reading sections that allow you to read and familiarize yourself with the scenario and the functionality of the scenario PDF that I'll show you in a few minutes. Also included then are two question sections in which the questions are delivered to you, and you will still have access to that scenario while you're going through those and actually answering questions, but they're timed separately, so it gives you an opportunity to understand the scenario and read it prior to actually starting the question timer. And lastly, you'll see a satisfaction survey. It was very helpful to us if you can answer those questions, if you do take the time to do that. It helps us improve that experience for other candidates, as well as weeding out those testing centers that may not be performing at the required level of professionalism and service. So prior to the exam, and this isn't on the slide here in front of you, you will be asked to agree to a candidate agreement. It's recommended, it's out and available on our web pages, and we'll give you that information in a few minutes, but it's recommended that you go out and read that candidate agreement so that you don't need to take the time to do that while you're in the testing seat. It doesn't come away from your exam time, but it's just something else that you have to get out of the way. So if you read, once you've agreed to that, you will be moved to this screen, which is the opening screen for the examination. And it's also important that you just read through these instructions and make sure that you understand them before you move into the exam, to the first reading section itself. This is the screen that you're going to see on the first reading section and on the second reading section. It explains what that 10-minute section is for, and take the time in here to read the scenario and become familiar with that functionality of the PDF. So if you click on the scenario button at any time, whether it's in the reading section or in the exam, you're going to bring up that scenario, and it's in a PDF file. And it can be sized and resized any way you like, and it can be moved anywhere around the screen, but it will come up there right on top of the screen. And that sizing should persist between questions. So once you're in the question section, and you'll see that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the scenario in a few minutes. Also accessible during the reading section by clicking the Notes button is a Notes section. You can type any notes that you want into this box, and you'll be able to access these particular notes in the question section that's related to this scenario. So after reading section 1, when you're on scenario 1, you'll still be able to access the notes that you made during the reading section while you were reading through the scenario. And then when you feel comfortable with the scenario and the functionality, you'll click Next. You'll always be asked if you want to end this section, because once you move out of a section during this exam, you cannot return to that section. So you would not be able to come back to the reading section, and the clock will start to answer questions. This is how the scenario will appear on the screen, as I mentioned previously. Again, you can resize and reposition that window, and it should persist through the items. There is a standard PDF taskbar which is included. Play with those buttons, get familiar with that during the reading section. It'll allow you to navigate page by page, zoom in and out, etc. And then the section headings of the table of contents are all hyperlinks, and they will hyperlink you directly to that portion of the document. So that's one way to help navigate more quickly. From within the document, anywhere you can choose back to top, and that will take you back up to the table of contents. From within the document, you can choose, or you can search the document for keywords by using the Find feature in the upper left-hand corner. You'll just type in your keywords and click Find, and you'll find that information. This next slide here shows basically a standard question. You'll see that the time remaining in that particular exam section, so that is not time remaining in the overall exam, that is time remaining in this question section of the exam. That'll be listed in the top right-hand corner, and there is a 15-minute pop-up timer that comes up when you have 15 minutes left in any particular section. Basic functionality, pretty self-explanatory. The next and previous buttons allow you to navigate through the questions back and forth throughout the exam. If you choose to mark items to remember to review them later, you click the Mark button. When an item is marked, that will be highlighted, so when you come back to it, you'll be able to see that it's marked. If you click on it again, you would then, of course, lose the highlighting and it would no longer be marked. I mentioned earlier how to pull up the scenario, how to pull up the notes section. I'm not going to show you that again here, but it's the same way it works during the reading section. Those boxes would come up. You can have multiple boxes on the screen at a time. To get rid of them, you can X them out, or you can click these buttons and they will drop down to the bottom again. You'll also have access to a full functioning calculator if you would need that throughout the exam. Next, I just want to explain the comments box. So the comments box the use of this box varies by candidate. This box can hold information that's specific to that item, so that anything that you type in this box will remain with that item unless you were to delete it. So as you move back and forth through items, if there's something you want to remember on a particular question, you can type it into the comments box, and when you click on comment, it would come back up. The notes is going to carry through all of the items, not specific to an item. And then any comment that is left in that box when you end the section and or the exam will actually be submitted to the TCPP program. So if there's anything that you feel we need to know about a particular question, you can put that in the comments, and then it often helps if you just notify us, hey, I commented on an item during my test. You guys should pay attention to it, and we'll go out and take a look at those particular comments that you may have entered. Next, just to show you the review button, click on the review button and it will take you to the review screen. Imagine that. This review screen shows you the way that all of the items are marked or indicated based on how you've answered them so far. So marked items will be indicated by a small red triangle to the left of the question and the word yes in the marked column. So you'll be able to see which items altogether you have marked. Incomplete items will have a lowercase I next to the question itself, and the yes in the incomplete column. And then the complete items, and what we mean by a complete item basically means that you have checked the correct number of responses in that item. So it's not telling you they're right or wrong or anything else. It's telling you that if the item says, please choose 2 responses, you have chosen 2, and they've been marked, and then the item would be shown as complete. But it could also be complete and marked as well if you want to go back and review that item. You can choose the way that you wish to go back and review items by reviewing all. It will take you through all of the items from start to finish, starting with question number 1. If you choose to review incomplete, it's going to take you back to your first incomplete item and then take you in a series through the rest of the incomplete items in a row. So you get back to the review screen. And if you review marked, you would go back and start with the very first item that you marked and then move through those questions in order, all of the ones that you marked. At any time, you can click on the actual question itself, and that's going to hyperlink you to that particular question that you will be given in the testing center. If they don't give it to you, please feel free to request it because they should. It's just a dry erase board. They're not the greatest tool. That's why we've implemented the notes section in the comments box. But if you just jot down question 1, question 5, it may be easier to navigate through this. If you haven't marked it but you have some other note on it, you could do that on a dry erase board as well and just go directly to that item from this screen. And through this review screen is the only way to actually end the exam as well. So if you're confident in your answers, you feel as though you've taken the right amount of time and given them all the right amount of thought, and you feel good, you would click on End. And it's going to ask you again if you want to. And then you'll see this box, whether it's at the end of a section or at the end of the entire exam. So if this is at the end of your first scenario section, you will see this, but it's going to basically tell you you cannot come back into this scenario. You'll be moved into the next reading section and the next scenario following that. So if you are confident, you would click yes. And if this is the end of the exam, you will then move into the survey that I mentioned earlier. And again, it's very helpful to us if you take just a few minutes to answer those questions. And it's really based on the experience at the testing center more than anything else. And as indicated on this slide here, you're going to receive an on-screen reminder to pick up your printed notice of completion from the test center staff on your way out. You will not be given your results in the actual testing center, but this notice of completion will include instructions on how to access your exam history and your results as soon as they're available, and you will receive an automated message by email as well that notifies you to go out to our certification tracking system and find those results. So you will not get them there on site, and there is typically it's much less time, but there is a 21-day period in which those results will be posted. So within that 21 days, they'll be posted. Typically, it's much more towards the very beginning end of that range. And most importantly, we wish you, as the certification program, we wish you the best of luck. If there are anything that we can answer for you, if you have any questions about the tutorial I've just walked through, we're happy to take some of those right now. And I'm going to turn it back to Julie to give you our contact information and wrap things up for today.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We're running, just on time. So again, if you do have additional questions, please feel free to submit those questions to our certification mailbox. I'm showing you that information right here where you can contact us. I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us today. You can always reach the TCPP team on the web, through email, and now also through our new chat feature. We wish you all the best of luck and look forward to welcoming you as Teradata 12 and Teradata 14 Masters in the very near future. Thank you, and this completes our webinar for today.
Many thanks go to Julie and Matt and our special guests for taking the time to present this invaluable information. To you viewers, thanks so much for your attendance and participation. We hope you enjoyed the presentation and will come back and join us for other presentations on the Teradata Education Network. This concludes the presentation, Demystifying the Teradata Master Certification.